clock is ticking. You're watching history being made right now. As you watch this video, 3 days remain before the most consequential energy deadline in a generation, April 6th, 2026. Yes, that is when US President Donald Trump has said that if Iran does not agree to reopen Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical oil choke point, United States will destroy Iran's power plants, its oil wells, possibly seize Kurg Island, the export hub that handles 90% of Iran's crude. 3 days. Meanwhile, Brent crude is at $107.76. North Sea dated crude hit $142 on April 2nd, the highest since July 2008. VLCC's tanker rates are all-time record high, and Europe is being told to work from home, drive less and fly less. I am Jeetu from Energy Trilemma, our daily global energy update. Today is April 3rd, 2026, and this is day 34th of the Hormuz crisis, and this is everything you need to know. Now, what is the Hormuz crisis? How we got here? So let me take 30 seconds to give you the complete picture for anyone who is new to this channel. On day one, Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed on February 28th, an untoward incident. Since then, 21 confirmed attack on merchant vessels. 2 crew members were killed. 5 tankers were completely damaged. 150 ships are still stranded off the coast of Fujairah in UAE. There are vessels who are anchored outside strait. And the insurance market did what markets do when they see uninsurable risk. They pulled coverage. War risk premiums for Persian Gulf vessels effectively became infinite. Without P&I insurance, no commercial ship can legally operate. Without ships, no oil moves in one stroke. In one stroke, Iran effectively blockaded a fifth of world's energy trade. A fifth. Now, let's look into some numbers, prices. Let's talk about prices, and I'm going to give you the real numbers cross-verified as of this morning for your reference. Brent crude $107.76 per barrel with a daily trading range of $99 to $109.74. Up 44%, yes, 44% year to date. WTI, that is a West Texas Intermediate, the US benchmark, is at $106.59, and here something extraordinary. WTI has inverted gains Brent. So normally Brent trades at a premium to WTI because it reflects global scarcity. When WTI trades above Brent, it means the crisis is being priced differently in different markets. On 2nd April, WTI spiked to $111.29 higher than Brent. The global benchmark structure has inverted. Now look at the North Sea dated crude chart. Spiked to $142, and then this is an Argus Media benchmark for physical crude trading in Europe. Okay, North Sea dated, that hit $142.15 per barrel, the largest single day absolute increase in Argus records going back to January 1990, the highest level since July 2008, the all-time peak of the last great oil shock. Natural gas in Europe, that is TTF, is at 50 euros per megawatt hour, up 32% year on year. And Bank of America wants. It could hit 60 if the crisis continue. And if you ship things, as I said, VLCC tankerettes, very large crude carriers, these are the super tankers, all-time record, $423,000 per day, up 220% from 2025 average. One ship, one day, $423,000. The cost of a full VLCC cargo from the Arabian Gulf to China is over $20 million. Shocking, isn't it? So let's look into the largest emergency oil reserves in history. The International Energy Agency, which is called IEA, did something it has only done 5 times in its entire 52-year history. Yes, 52-year history. They released 400 million barrels. Yes, 400 million barrels of oil. But this time it did something it has never done before. The size or the scale. 400 million barrels unanimously agreed by all 32 IEA member countries. The United States alone is contributing 172 million barrels from these strategic petroleum reserves. That's roughly 33% of world's government held emergency oil safety net deployed in a single action. Just for in context, the 2022 Russian-Ukraine release was 182 million barrels, and that was considered a historic at that time. So this is more than double that. Did it work? I say partially. It prevented a complete market panic in mid-March. Oil dropped from a peak of $190 to around $90 briefly when the release was announced. But it could not substitute for the physical flows. JP Morgan said it clearly. Policy measures may have a limited impact on oil price unless safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz is assured. IEA Executive Director Faith Bureau himself said the most important thing for a return to stable flows of oil and gas is the resumption of transit through the Strait of Hormuz. No release can substitute for reopening the strait, the Hormuz Strait. Now let's look up to something diplomatically what is going on. We want to see how diplomacy is working around here. We can say, here is where it gets both hopeful and terrifying, I would say. Hopeful and terrifying. Why? The foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan met in Islamabad. The delegation confirmed that both Washington and Tehran have expressed confidence in mediation talks. In the coming days, now China's foreign minister Yang Yi backed these initiatives. United Nations Secretary General Guterres expressed support to these initiatives. But here is the discrepancy I want you to understand, because markets are pricing on the ambiguity. Trump says Iran is begging to make a deal, and that talks are going extremely well. However, Iran's foreign minister Agrachi publicly says no negotiations. The Iranian parliament speaker says Trump is manipulating financial and oil markets. The truth, based on cross-verified reporting from Al Jazeera, PBS, Reuters, and Arms Control Association, is this: there is message exchange through intermediaries. Is not formal negotiation. Iran's conditions are hardened since the war began, but there is a message exchange. So that seems to be good if there is a message exchange. Now let's look into an exclusive Trilemma channel intel I want to share. I have Iran's demands list and all US and Israel attacks, war reparations, international recognition of Iranian sovereignty over the entire Strait of Hormuz. So expect tool like Panama or Suez Canal, full sanctions removal, closure of all US bases in the Gulf. They also want to keep their missile program running and humming. These are not the demands of a party begging for a deal. Does this sound begging to you, viewers? April 6th, 3 days from here, either intermediaries broke a breakthrough or Trump follows through. Let's see what happens. We hope for the best. Now, what this means for India, I think India is in the eye of a storm here. For us in India, this crisis is very personal. I want to give you the full picture. India is the world's third largest oil importer. We consume around 5 to 5.5 million barrels per day of refined petroleum products. Before this crisis, about 50 to 55% of our crude imports came from Middle East, most of it transiting the Strait of Hormuz. The government has moved very fast, I would say. Here is what has been done. I would share exclusive Trilemma channel research and intel for you. First, rerouting. 70% of our crude now routes outside the Strait of Hormuz, up from 55% before the crisis. This is a massive logistics pivot. Second, Russia. India secured approximately 30 million barrels of Russian crude. Russia remains a key buffer, even as the US-India trade deal attempted to link our purchases to freeze on Russian oil. India has not confirmed any compliance with that condition. Third, Iran agreement. This is significant. Iran has granted Indian vessels a safe passage through the strait. This is a diplomatic win for New Delhi, I would say, and reflects India's careful management of its relationship with Tehran. Fourth, the emergency orders. If you remember, the Natural Gas Control Order of March, 9th March, under the Essential Commodities Act, 100% supply guaranteed for CNG and domestic PNG. Industrial users, moderate cut is there. Refineries running above 100% capacity utilization. So the next thing which I noticed is reserves. We have approximately 100 million barrels of crude in reserves, roughly 40 to 74 days of an average, not unlimited though, but sufficient for the immediate crisis management, I would say that. India's LPG vulnerability, that is high, 60% imported, 90% via Hormuz. But here is our biggest vulnerability, I would say. LPG, cooking gas, we import 60% of its LPG consumption and 90% of those imports, as I already said, from Hormuz. So the IEA as well specifically flagged India as facing a particularly challenging situation on LPG and described US LPG as being 5 to 6 weeks away by sea. So domestic LPG production has actually increased, if we all know, like 25%, but this is not a long-term solution. If the strait remains closed, the macro picture, the rupee is under pressure. RBI trying best off and on mechanisms. Our import bill has surged. Domestic fuel prices have not been raised, which means the government is absorbing the pain. Growing subsidy burden, this cannot go on indefinitely. Now, you're on Trilemma, Energy Trilemma channel. Let's try to look into all these things in a perspective of Energy Trilemma. These all three corners, as I've said yesterday, these are fractured. So the tension between energy security, energy affordability, and energy sustainability is quite visible. I want to be direct with you. This Trilemma triangle that we spoke about, all three dimensions seems to be in complete red. The Hormuz crisis has collapsed all three dimensions simultaneously, and actually that has never happened before at this scale. Now, security, energy security, physically overridden by geopolitical force. Every paper buffer the market relied on, OPEC spare capacity or a commercial inventories or strategic reserves SPR, was exposed as an inadequate against a determined physical blockade. The world's most important choke point was closed by single actor in almost 72 hours. Now, energy affordability, Brent at $107, North Sea dated as we spoke at 142, US gasoline at $4, TTF Europe at 50 euros. Jet fuel is in critical shortage. Goldman has raised its recession probability. Oxford economics models predict $140 oil as the tipping point for European and Japanese recession. How about energy sustainability? Sustainability, coal is back. Germany is using coal, switching to coal. Asia is burning coal. SAF blending is deferred. Green hydrogen timelines are freezed. The energy transition that was supposed to be driven by policy is now being driven by affordability collapse. And that is a painful, destructive form of a transition. The lesson is not that energy transition is wrong. The lesson is that you cannot have a transition away from fossil fuels without first securing the alternatives. Europe shut down nuclear, killed Russian gas, built renewables on a grid that could not connect them. And then, when the crisis hit, Europe had no buffer. India has a lesson to learn here too. Diversification is good, but 50 to 70% dependence on a single choke point for your energy imports is not a diversification. I see that as a concentration. Now let's try to look into an outlook and what's there in the future for that. So where does this go from here? As I discussed 3 scenarios yesterday, we would expand on that. In simple terms, deal on or around April 6th by intermediaries broke a breakthrough and Iran agrees to a partial Hormuz reopening, then I see market pricing Brent around 80 to 90. That's the short term. But this is critical. Kuwait CEO has warned that it takes 3 to 4 months to restore Gulf Arab production, even after reopening. As we have already discussed multiple times, QatarEnergy is 70% damaged, 3 to 5 years to fully repair. Oil prices do not return to pre-war levels. Goldman Sachs says that there is a price flow has risen permanently. So scenario 2, if we see deadline extended, if Trump issues another ultimatum and with a new date, say like 10th, 15th, prices stay elevated, 100 to 115 range. Uncertainty is premium then. More demand destruction, more coal switching, recession risk creeping higher. Then the third scenario, that is escalation. If US strikes Iranian power plants, oil wells, possibly Khark Island, Iran will retaliate possibly against Gulf energy infrastructure. Goldman has again said if Hormuz stays at 5% for next 10 weeks, prices break 2008 record. Bank of America says $200 per barrel in the extreme scenario. Oxford economics, global recession. Right now market are pricing a roughly 40 to 60% probability of scenario 1. That is why Brent is at 107, somewhere around not 90, not 140. The uncertainty premium is embedded in every barrel you are buying today. So let's watch these things in next 72 hours. What happens to peace talk confirmations, Trump's Truth Social inputs, or Hormuz transit data from Kepler. Iran Foreign Minister's tone, IEA's emergency tracker. These are the Trilemma energy trackers which we would be monitoring, and it helps to track what's happening in the world's energy market. Please subscribe this channel. We exist to give you the intelligence, not the noise. Like this video, share this with someone who is trying to make sense of what's happening to energy prices. I will be back with a live update the moment the April 6th deadline triggers changes or whatever direction it goes. Till then, stay informed, stay ahead, stay with Trilemma Energy. Thank you.